Judicial Watch has some big news. The court authorized Judicial Watch to depose Hillary Clinton directly on her email conduct with documents relating to Benghazi and how it impacted the people's right to know under FOIA. So for our viewers who aren't really familiar with this or the process, if you could kind of take us back and give us an explainer.
Well, thank you, Stephanie. This is a Freedom of Information Act case that initially sought records for the Benghazi talking points. Remember those talking points that were used to, looks like, lie to the American people about what happened in Benghazi, whether the State Department and Justice Department were part of an effort to dupe the court into shutting the case down before he figured out where her emails were or that she had them. And he also wants to know where the emails are. Where are all the emails? Can we find them? Because the records need to be searched under the law, under the FOIA law. So he granted us some discovery, which means we can gather evidence, get documents, talk to witnesses. And the witnesses just further deepened the scandal in the sense of their testimony told us that Mrs. Clinton was warned 6 times about emails and their, security issues. State Department people knew about her email system, but didn't tell anyone outside the State Department about it. They were keeping it secret. The Obama White House was involved in the cover-up, and they're still dribbling out emails, believe it or not. And the court is frankly fed up, and Mrs. Clinton has given us written answers under oath, but the court doesn't deem that sufficient because they haven't really been terribly helpful. And he thinks that she should come in and testify under oath directly.
Well, if you could remind us and refresh our memory on the talking points, it was they blamed the attacks on a YouTube video.
That's right. It was a spontaneous demonstration in response to a YouTube video, when in fact it was a planned terrorist attack. They knew about it. They were arguably forewarned about it, and they knew immediately it was a terrorist attack, but they told the American people otherwise.
And I saw that here in your press release, you said additionally the court granted Judicial Watch's request to subpoena Google for relevant documents and records associated with Hillary Clinton's email. So what do you expect to find in that?
Well, we don't know, and the court's interested to know what we might find. That's why he granted us the ability to subpoena Google, because one of Hillary Clinton's email aides on the outside, a vendor, allegedly emailed all of her emails to a Google email address. So the court wants to know if there are emails over there that should be just uncovered and produced.
And you have to wonder, I mean, this is taking an incredibly long time to get to the bottom of all this. Like, why is this taking so long?
Because of the obstruction of the Justice Department and the State Department. They don't want to allow us to get to the bottom of this. They fight us tooth and nail. And so the court has to hear both sides of the argument before we get anywhere. And one of the reasons the court's frustrated is because the Justice Department and State Department are putting forward what he called yesterday in his ruling preposterous arguments to stop us from asking questions. And so, when you're in litigation and one side's always fighting, it goes slower.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, look, we were in court it was December, arguing about this very case, Steph, and on the other side were 6 lawyers from the Justice Department and the State Department, and Hillary Clinton's lawyers and other lawyers as well. So the Justice Department and State Department are been defending Hillary Clinton's misconduct and has been trying to stop us from getting answers. So hence the delay.
Well, we'll certainly be keeping an eye on this, and hopefully you'll let me know if you get anything else.
Well, it has to happen within the next 75 days, according to the court order. So Mrs. Clinton and some of this other testimony will take place over the next 3-4 months.
Great. Well, we'll be keeping an eye on it. And I want to shift gears here for a second. I follow you on Twitter, and I saw you talking about Reddit. So do you think Reddit is moving away from its free speech roots?
Well, it certainly is if you are deemed to be supporters of President Trump. Now, Reddit is a major internet site. People may not be as familiar with it as Twitter or Facebook, but I think it's like one of the top 5 websites in the world. And you can go on to Reddit and you can create what is called subreddits, which are discussion groups, essentially, about an area of interest to people. In this case, it was supporters of President Trump, and I have been using that subreddit because I know millions of Americans were going on and looking at stories and things that were being posted, essentially post stories and videos and pictures and things. But the administrators at Reddit came in and clamped down and in an Orwellian turn, quarantined the subreddit, which made it impossible to find on Google searches and basically much harder to find on Reddit itself. And more recently, they've kind of taking more severe action that's effectively shut down the subreddit. In my view, this is one of the biggest suppression efforts by big tech of conservatives and supporters of President Trump. We're not on it for political purposes but we know a lot of people who want to learn about our work are there, so we post the material. So they're harming our ability to educate Americans, and obviously they're suppressing of the rights of Americans unfairly to talk about public policy on a regular basis, and seemingly simply because they're conservative.
Yeah, and I see what you're talking about, because a lot of people believe that Reddit was like a safe space for free speech, and a lot of people use it. Millions of people use it, and what you're talking about is the community quarantine. So it just won't show up in a search. You have to actually go look for it yourself. One site, the Donald America First, which has almost 1 million followers, it's the same thing. It's just like warning you before you get in there. And I guess Reddit's reason for it was that the company did so after finding violent threats against public officials in the thread. But I'm sure you could find that anywhere. Not that that's acceptable. People should.
Yeah, I mean, no one agrees that ought to be posted violent threats, obviously, but they've been vague as to what the issues are generally, and they just make up new issues. It looks like, to me at least, as they seek to justify the further quarantine of this discussion forum. It's really incredible, and it's a good example of how you've got this censorship of people people who are deemed to be supporters of President Trump or conservatives generally. They have hundreds of thousands of people, it looks like, who have signed up to participate on a regular basis. But like all these other sites, you don't need to sign up to necessarily participate. So there are millions of Americans being affected. And I know anecdotally that many people, when they stop me and say they want to say great things about Judicial Watch and say hello, they often are seeing our material on Reddit. So they're really suppressing a lot of information through this needless quarantine. They got their rules, and the rules seem to be arbitrarily enforced against one side of the philosophical divide and not against the other.
During a CPAC panel recently, Donald Trump Jr. said that conservatives need to wake up to social media censorship, saying that it's one of the top 3 issues. Do you agree with him on that?
I think it's a significant issue, and one of the concerning developments I've noticed over the last year or so, that the censorship isn't just emerging out of the tech companies organically. It's as a result of pressure from politicians. Adam Schiff says, you're not allowed to talk about the whistleblower. Boom, boom, boom. Facebook, Instagram, Google, and Reddit ban the use of the name of the whistleblower, the alleged whistleblower that was conspiring with Adam Schiff. So there you've got this unholy alliance between government officials and big tech to censor information. And now we have Hillary Clinton and the left pressuring Facebook, for instance, to suppress further conservatives and start censoring political ads and the focus is that political ads are by Donald Trump. They don't care about other politicians. They just want to suppress him for political purposes, obviously. But it impacts conservatives as well. So this is not Facebook liberals just doing this on their own. This isn't just big tech liberals suppressing conservatives on their own. They're being pressured also by government politicians, which adds a new wrinkle to the First Amendment debate, because the argument had been, well, these are private companies and they can do what they want. Well, they're working with government to suppress us. Well, I think it's different.
So you're for a government intervention or more government involvement overseeing big tech? Because I know the libertarian angle is, let the free markets decide. We don't want the government involved, because eventually that would affect us more than it's affecting us now.
Well, I don't know what the intervention, if the law even needs to be changed. I mean, the liability that Facebook and Twitter and YouTube have, the liability they're protected from is a result of their saying that they're bulletin boards, essentially. They don't make editorial decision making. Well, the more censorship they engage in, and the more, when they decide what goes up and can stay up on the bulletin board, that's more editorial decision making. And I think the liability protections they currently have may not even apply without even any change in the law.